This decision by the Texas DMV board, it really was, months in the making. And ultimately, there wasn't a single person on the board who voted against it. So it was.
This just changed the game for every driver in the country. Texas just voted unanimously to stop illegal aliens from registering vehicles. If you can't prove you're a citizen, you're not getting on the road. This is going to send shockwaves through the entire system.
How did this all come about? It was Texas State Rep Brian Harrison. And he's taken seemingly a bit of a victory lap on social media, writing, quote, proud to have forced the DMV to stop allowing illegal aliens register vehicles in Texas, and saying this was happening for so many years. His push began last November. Fast forward to now with the new guideline, officials from Texas DMV say, there are two main goals here for them. One, prevent undocumented immigrants from registering and then renewing vehicles in the Lone Star State. Then two, ensure the validity of ID and documents required as part of the registration process. Critics say it does way more than that.
It's going to cause some people to, they're going to have to register their cars. They'll pay somebody else to do it for them, or they're going to drive around with unregistered cars. Now, the problem with that, of course, is let's say that, somebody was a witness to a crime and the police want to find them. Well, they have no identifying information anymore. But then, when you think about it, how can this not be racially profiled?
Did you see the look on the board members' faces? They didn't even blink. Unanimous. That's a massive shift for a state as big as Texas. Think about the logistics here. For years, people have been driving around without verified status, and now the DMV is basically becoming a secondary border checkpoint. The critic they showed at the end made a wild point about witnesses to crimes, but honestly, that feels like a reach. If you're driving an unregistered car, you're already off the grid, right? The real takeaway is that this policy is designed to make it impossible to function in daily life without legal status. It's not just about the border anymore. It's about the paperwork you need to get to work or the grocery store. It's a smart play from a legal standpoint because it uses existing administrative rules to enforce immigration law. You have to wonder which state is going to follow Texas next. This is going to get very messy in the courts very fast.
Representative, may I?
Yes.
I'm going to give you some numbers. Just today, it came out that ICE is using $38 billion to convert warehouses into camps. I'm going to call them concentration camps. Your colleague, Representative Raskin, went to one. Leaders lead. And what we've seen is people are impressionable. If you lead on something, people will follow. It seems the wind is behind your back for the first time ever. You said you want to rein in ICE. I'm talking about the long term now. Why not lead and say abolish ICE? Because what you're telling us is you want our taxpayer dollars to pay for a lawless masked armed agency to continue terrorizing our cities. And I'm trying to figure out how you, as a leader, can be telling Americans that their taxpayer dollars should be going to ICE.
I don't understand anything that you just said.
I spoke English.
I don't understand anything that you've just said to me when I've made clear that taxpayer dollars should be used to make life more affordable for the American people, not brutalize or kill them. That's the whole reason we're in this fight right now. That's the whole reason the DHS is getting ready to shut down. That's
So
the whole
abolish
reason
ICE.
why
You agree
we
with
are
me and Joy.
voting.
Abolish ICE.
Listen, I'm going to use the language that I want to use. You can use the language that you want to use. And the language that I'm using right now relates to these type of bold, meaningful, dramatic changes that are designed to save lives right now.
That exchange on the Joy Reid show was absolutely intense. Did you catch the guest calling these warehouses concentration camps? That is some high-level rhetoric being thrown around on national TV. But look at the congressman's reaction. He's clearly trying to dance around the abolish ICE trap. He knows that saying those words on camera is political suicide in most districts, but his own base is breathing down his neck. It's fascinating to watch the divide within the party happen in real time. You've got the activists demanding total destruction of the agency, while the leadership is desperately trying to explain why they're still signing the checks. The guest was basically accusing him of using taxpayer dollars to terrorize cities. When the conversation gets this heated, nobody is actually looking for a solution anymore. They're just fighting for the loudest soundbite. It shows you exactly why the immigration debate is totally paralyzed in D.C. right now. They can't even agree on what to call the buildings, let alone how to manage the people inside them.
City Council in a career fair event which aimed to recruit new CBP officers after widespread backlash on campus. Ty Pyro has the details.
Good morning, LJ. The controversy was triggered when Columbia School of Professional Studies started advertising a virtual career expo that border officials are hosting this Wednesday on campus. The official description of the post reading, quote, "This is a unique opportunity to learn more about our mission and how you could contribute to it, making a positive impact on yourself, your community, and your country." But many on Columbia's campus were not happy. A group of faculty members signed on to a letter demanding that the CBP career fair listing gets taken down, stating, quote, "This event undermines campus trust, makes parts of our community feel targeted or unsafe, and further damages Columbia's public standing by reinforcing the view that we are complicit in the turn towards authoritarianism," adding, quote, "Silence will be read as consent." Columbia's chapter for Young Democrat Socialists of America also protesting the listing, writing, quote, "Our university is not just complicit, it is actively facilitating the recruitment of people like Border Patrol agent Jesus Ochoa and Customs and Border Protection Officer Raimundo Gutierrez, the two killers of Alex Preddy," end quote.
Columbia University just canceled a career fair because of, quote, "safety concerns" over ICE recruiters being on campus. Think about that for a second. We're talking about an Ivy League institution effectively banning a federal agency from talking to students. The faculty letter they showed was wild, claiming that having a Border Patrol recruiter on campus, quote, "undermines trust and makes people feel, quote, unsafe." It's a career fair. If you don't like the agency, don't go to the booth. But this is the new reality on campuses, where the loudest voices get to decide who is allowed to offer jobs. They mentioned the, quote, "turn toward authoritarianism," which is ironic when you consider they're the ones shutting down an event. It's a huge blow to students who actually might want those high-paying federal jobs with great benefits. You're seeing a complete disconnect between the academic world and the reality of how the government functions. It's not just a protest anymore. It's a total blackout of any organization they deem complicit.
Security is pushing ahead with its plans of expanding detention space across the country. The agency confirming to Fox it has purchased a warehouse facility in Chester, New York, less than 2 hours from New York City. CB Cotton is live in our New York newsroom with the details. Hello, CB.
Hey, Mike. So the latest facility in Chester, New York now joins a list of several other warehouses located across the country that have been purchased by DHS from funding through the One Big Beautiful Bill. But listen, there's pushback in these local communities, including in Chester, New York, where we know DHS had been eyeing this old auto parts warehouse as a future ICE detention center. ICE confirmed to Fox that it's purchased a facility, but would not say whether this is the exact location. Democratic U.S. Congressman Pat Ryan, who represents the area, has led opposition to the plans. He held a rally in late January telling Trump administration officials to stay the F out of the Hudson Valley. He's also circulated a petition in opposition to DHS, which he says has thousands of signatures. Other elected leaders tell Fox there are economic, environmental, and safety concerns they have about ICE expanding into the community.
Look at this warehouse in Chester, New York. It's less than 2 hours from the city, and DHS just scooped it up to turn it into a massive detention center. The local congressman, Pat Ryan, was literally telling the administration to stay the F out of his valley. It's funny because these are the same leaders who often talk about humanitarian treatment, but the moment a facility moves into their backyard, it's a full-scale revolt. They're worried about the economy and the environment, but let's be real, it's about the optics of having an ICE hub in a blue district. The facility is supposed to bring 1,000 jobs and tens of millions in tax revenue, but the community is rejecting it anyway. It's the ultimate not in my backyard scenario. DHS is moving ahead anyway because they've already got the funding from that big, beautiful bill everyone was talking about. It just proves that no matter what the politicians say on the news, the machinery of the government is still moving full steam ahead behind the scenes.
3, 2, 1, fuck you!
Check out the energy at Trump Tower. These protesters are out there in the middle of a holiday, chanting and demanding a total halt to all deportations. It's a heavy scene, but you have to look at the irony here. While they're outside chanting, the actual funding for the agencies they hate has already been signed, sealed, and delivered. It's almost like they're shouting at a brick wall. They're calling for an economic blackout, which essentially means they want people to stop spending money in their own communities to protest a federal agency. That's a bold strategy, but it usually ends up hurting the local mom-and-pop shops more than it hurts the government. You can feel the frustration in the air, but there's a massive gap between the passion on the street and the reality of how the budget works in Washington. They're fighting for a world that the current law simply doesn't support, and you can see that desperation in every single shout.
But what is also true is that we're a nation of laws, we have borders, and we've got to figure out an immigration policy that is orderly and that is fair and is enforced in a sensible way that is compatible with our values, but may not fully capture the degree to which that kid should have the same chances in life as a U.S. citizen kid. But, you know, we've got to accommodate the reality that the majority of the American people think that there's a difference between somebody who's a U.S. citizen and somebody who's not, and that they want an orderly immigration system.
This clip of Obama is like a time capsule from a completely different era of politics. Listen to him talk about being a nation of laws and the need for orderly immigration. He's explicitly saying there is a difference between a citizen and a non-citizen. If a politician said that today in certain circles, they'd be labeled immediately. It's wild to see how much the goalposts have moved in just a decade. He was trying to bridge the gap between humanitarian values and the reality of a border. But today's debate doesn't allow for that middle ground. It's either abolish everything or close everything. Watching this, you realize that the establishment view of immigration used to be much more focused on enforcement than it is now. He even mentions that the majority of Americans want a system that actually works and follows the rules. It's a stark contrast to the footage we just saw of the protests at Trump Tower. It makes you wonder when exactly the conversation shifted from orderly system to total blackout.
They could have a massive impact and send a very strong signal to the markets and to the administration that they do not support what's going on. The Montgomery bus strike, being the most famous economic strike, had a cinematic moment where a brave woman refused to give up her seat. But what really moved the needle, Dana, was a coordinated carpooling effort that took place over a year with thousands of carpools that ultimately cost the municipal bus system there $2 million, and then they decided to desegregate. So consumers don't realize the power they have when they pull back from spending, specifically on big tech subscription programs. We've already had 1 million people to the site, and I think just alone from these unsubscribes from this movement, we're going to take $250 million out of the market cap of big tech.
Scott Galloway is bringing up the Montgomery bus boycott to justify a tech strike. That is a massive comparison to make. He's basically asking people to unsubscribe from big tech to take $250 million out of the market. The idea is to force the administration's hand on immigration by hitting the economy where it hurts. But think about how hard that is to coordinate in the digital age. Most people aren't going to give up their convenience for a political statement they might not even fully understand. It's a cinematic idea, but the reality of carpooling to hurt a municipal system versus deleting an app to hurt a global tech giant is totally different. He's banking on the power of the consumer, but we've seen time and again that unless a boycott is near universal, the markets just absorb the hit and move on. It's an interesting look into the elite strategy of trying to weaponize the radical base for economic warfare.
This mission will go on because they are still funded through the big, beautiful bill, which is something that Democrats don't want to talk about in this fight as they hold hostage FEMA and some other really important programs. You know, some of the demands we went over just now, including judicial warrants to be able to target a home, go inside of a home, unmasking ICE agents. These are things that Republicans are not willing to negotiate on. That's the stuff that we're seeing on paper. But there is still a whole flank of the Democratic Party that is calling to defund ICE. They want ICE gone altogether. They don't want reforms. They just want the agency completely disbanded. It's hard to tell what this party, how it feels about immigration enforcement anymore. We don't know where they're at.
This final report from Fox really drives the point home. The ICE mission isn't stopping because the money is already there. All the shouting, all the career fair cancellations, and all the concentration camp rhetoric doesn't change the fact that the check has been cashed. The reporter mentions that Republicans aren't even willing to negotiate on things like judicial warrants or unmasking agents. It's a total stalemate. On one side, you have a flank of the party calling to defund the agency entirely, and on the other, you have a government that is legally obligated to carry out the mission. It's a perfect summary of why people feel so frustrated with politics. You have two completely different realities happening at the same time: the reality of the street protests and the reality of the federal budget. And as the report says, it's getting harder and harder to tell where the Democratic Party even stands on enforcement anymore. Things are moving fast. Make sure you're following for the next update on the Texas DMV situation. See you in the next one.